Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. Experts say that Canada is warming twice as fast as the rest of the world. The Arctic is also warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet. Mountains are warming twice as fast as the rest of the world. The Gulf of Maine is warming twice as fast as the surface. Sweden is warming more than twice as fast as the global average. Alaska is warming twice as fast as the global average. Finland is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet. China is warming almost twice as fast as the global average. Ireland is warming twice as fast as the rest of the world. National parks are mysteriously warming twice as fast as the rest of the United States. Not to be outdone, however, Russia is warming 2.5 times quicker than the rest of the world. The western U.S. is heating up at nearly twice the rate of the rest of the world. The Tibetan Plateau is warming twice as fast as the rest of the world. Britain is also warming faster than the global average. Europe is warming faster than the global average, and scientists are 95% certain this is caused by humans. Science says that every place is warming faster than every place else. The exciting thing about this is that it appears that Common Core mathematics has raised everybody's skills above the median. But my favorite twice as fast article is from Mark Cerise at the National Snow and Ice Data Center. He's been studying the Arctic since 1982 and says that a 100-degree day in the Arctic Circle underscores how this region is now warming twice as fast as Earth. Wow, 100 degrees in the Arctic. It sounds like we've really messed up the planet. Except that the leading Arctic explorer from a century ago also reported 100-degree temperatures in the Arctic Circle. Stephenson spent a lot of his time educating the public about how hot it got inside the Arctic Circle during summer. Here's an article from the New York Times in 1922. The Arctic region, Stephenson says, has a summer climate suited to flying. One is impressed and reminded that high temperatures have been recorded in that part of the world 100 degrees in the shade by the United States Weather Bureau at Fort Yukon, north of the Arctic Circle. And here's the same story from National Geographic. 100 degrees official temperature from the United States Weather Bureau, north of the Arctic Circle. Stephenson also reported in 1922 that the ice between the North Pole and Alaska was young, thin, moving, rotten ice. And in 1911 there was no ice along the shores of Alaska or Siberia. During the summer 100 years ago, there was a 2-month-long, nearly unprecedented heat wave in Alaska. And the following summer in 1922, northern Norway was experiencing unprecedented tropical heat. For 6 weeks at Tromsø, Norway, temperatures ranged from 90 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, or 32 to 35 degrees Celsius. Around the time Stonehenge was built, the Arctic was 2.5 to 7 degrees Celsius warmer during summer, and the Arctic Ocean may have been periodically ice-free. This was with carbon dioxide levels much lower than they are now. Trees grew all the way to the edge of the Arctic Ocean, but now the tree line is 100 kilometers further south. It's unfortunate that the director of the National Snow and Ice Data Center doesn't seem to know much about the Arctic before the year 1982. So let's take a look at what's wrong with his view of the world. The coldest year on record in the capital of Iceland was 1979. Mark Cerise's knowledge of the Arctic seems to begin right around the coldest period on record. In 1974, Time magazine predicted another ice age and said, "Telltale signs are everywhere, from the unexpected persistence and thickness of pack ice in the water zone Iceland to the southward migration of a warmth-loving creature like the armadillo from the Midwest. Since the 1940s, the mean global temperatures dropped about 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit." In 1971, NASA's leading climate scientists predicted a new ice age in 50 to 60 years. That would be this year. I haven't seen any new glaciers, but we still have a few weeks left this year. In 1970, the New York Times reported, "The United States and the Soviet Union are mounting large-scale investigations to determine why the Arctic climate is becoming more frigid, why parts of the Arctic sea ice have recently become ominously thicker, and whether the extent of that ice cover contributes to the onset of ice ages." Scientists wanted to stop global cooling by sprinkling coal dust on the Arctic ice pack and melting it. Winter afternoon temperatures in the United States have been declining for a century, with the coldest period occurring during 1977, 1978, and 1979. And remember that 1979 was also the coldest year on record in the capital of Iceland. During January of 1977, the United States was so cold that it snowed in Miami. That was the only time it's ever happened. 42 top American and European investigators met at Brown University and sent a letter to President Nixon warning of a new ice age in about a century. Again, it's unfortunate that the director of the National Snow and Ice Data Center doesn't seem to know much about the history of the Arctic before 1982, because that came after the coldest decade on record. In 1982, the ice between the North Pole and Alaska was very thick, but in 1922 it was thin, rotten first-year ice. Arctic ice got much thicker between 1922 and 1982, which Mark Cerise seems to believe was the beginning of time. In 1974, the National Center for Atmospheric Research published this graph showing dramatic cooling from the 1940s into the 1970s. The CIA made alarming forecasts about how global cooling was going to devastate the human race. But enough of the propaganda. Now let's look at some actual science. This is a graph of an ocean circulation pattern known as the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. It was very high around 1940, very low in the late 1970s, and has gone back up again. If we overlay the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation on the Reykjavik temperature graph, we can see a very close correlation. Temperatures in the eastern Arctic are controlled by ocean circulation patterns, not carbon dioxide like the director of the National Snow and Ice Data Center believes. If Mark Cerise actually knew the history of the Arctic, he would be aware that temperatures there were warmer during the late 1930s and early 1940s than they have been in recent years. In 1939, the leading Arctic expert reported that all of the glaciers in eastern Greenland were rapidly melting. It may without exaggeration be said that the glaciers of eastern Greenland, like those in Norway, face the possibility of a catastrophic collapse. December 17, 1939. Temperatures in the eastern Arctic are controlled by the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. Now let's take a longer view of that. The peak year for the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, or AMO, was 1878. Minnesota had no winter during 1878. And temperatures at Burke, Australia reached 122 degrees in the shade. The fowls are dropping dead in large numbers. There's no sign of rain, and no cattle are traveling. In the year 2000, NASA showed 1878 as being the warmest year prior to 1980. And they showed no net warming from the 1870s through the 1970s. The actual temperature data was very inconvenient for the global warming theory they were pushing, so they erased all of the data prior to 1880 and massively cooled the past. Through the magic of data tampering and hiding critical data, NASA now shows lots of warming prior to 1980. And what about this inconvenient warm period around 1940 and subsequent global cooling? NASA has also erased that. The warmth of the 1940s no longer exists in their global temperature graph. This graph overlays in red the current NASA temperature graph on top of the NCAR graph from 1974. You can see that they've completely erased the global cooling after 1940. Iceland was very warm around 1940, and NASA erased that as well. This didn't happen by accident. In this 2009 ClimateGate email, climate scientists around the world discussed how they would get rid of the 1940s blip, and they didn't even have an explanation for why they were going to do it. It would be good to remove at least part of the 1940s blip, but we're still left with why the blip. In climate science, the data is altered to match the theory rather than making the theory match the data. There seems to be just about no limit to the data tampering by U.S. government agencies. In 2012, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration showed no warming in Texas, with 1921 being the warmest year. But since then, NOAA has massively cooled the year 1921 in Texas and created a strong warming trend during the same time period. In climate science, the future is 100% certain, but the past keeps changing and getting cooler and cooler with each revision. George Orwell said, He who controls the past controls the future, and he who controls the present controls the past. And the politics behind that is exactly what's driving the fraud in climate science. In his farewell speech, President Eisenhower warned, "The prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded." Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific technological elite. Toto thinks President Eisenhower was exactly right 60 years ago. Toto also wants to remind you that according to experts, where you live is warming twice as fast as every place else on Earth. You can visit Toto, Kyrie, and Caesar on the web at realclimatescience.com.